As much as any great movie needs a likable hero the audience can get behind, what is any film without an entertaining villain for the protagonist to stand up and prevail against? Sadly, many movies, even good ones, have the tendency to lend insufficient attention to their antagonist, hoping instead that the personality of the hero will be enough to satisfy audiences. Delivering a truly iconic movie villain is no easy feat, but in the case of these 10 films, they couldn't even settle for decent or pretty good. In short, they were either dull as dishwater or just a total failure of intent and execution. The fact that these mostly promising antagonists fell short of the mark speaks to the wider disappointment of each movie, proving that without a compelling force for the hero to fight against, a major piece of the storytelling puzzle was sadly missing. I'm Gareth from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 movies that really needed a better villain. Number 10. Quantum of Solace. What is any Bond film without a memorable villain for 007 to face off against? Admittedly, the franchise's rogues gallery has proven incredibly inconsistent over the decades, but there's perhaps never been a major Bond baddie more disappointingly forgettable than Quantum of Solace's Dominic Green. While Quantum of Solace suffered immeasurably through its strained production amid the 2007 to 2008 WGA strike, its villain is an absolute charisma vacuum. Despite a solid attempt by Mathieu Almaric to breathe some life into him, it all comes down to the writing, of course. What Green lacked in imposing stature, he surely could have compensated with his fierce intelligence. But following up Casino Royale's Le Chiffre and preceding Skyfall Silver as he did, his dullard billionaire megalomaniac couldn't help but pale in comparison. As refreshing as it was for the series to ditch the stereotypical physical deformities, Green's scheme to control Bolivia's water supply was pretty weak sauce. And beyond his amusing death, where Bond leaves him in the desert with only a can of oil to drink, there's precious little to actually remember here, which is a damn shame. Number 9. Ghostbusters 2016. Whether you found 2016's Ghostbusters a cynical retooling of a classic IP or a pleasant surprise, we can surely all agree that its villain was, well, absolutely terrible. After the original film dished up the unforgettable Gozer the Gozerian, and the sequel gave us the iconic Vigo the Carpathian, the third film took a sharp left turn and settled for Rowan North. Rowan is a loner occultist who ends up releasing ghosts in New York City as revenge against a humanity he now despises. And compared to the more heightened villainy of his predecessors, he just comes across as totally bland and unmemorable. Some fans also felt that Rowan was basically the film trying to hit back at sexist trolls who badmouthed the production before shooting even started, reinforced by the fact that he's eventually vanquished by being shot in the crotch. Ultimately, what this movie needed was a name actor to ham it up in the third act as a larger-than-life villain, not a relatively unknown SNL alum playing a cringe-worthy caricature of male entitlement. Number 8. The Matrix Reloaded. The Matrix sequels were always going to struggle to expand the original story in a meaningful way, and though The Matrix Reloaded certainly boasted enough electrifying action to satisfy, its climactic confrontation between Neo and the creator of The Matrix was less than stellar. At the end of the film, we learned that The Matrix's father is a program called the Architect, a smooth-accented, infuriatingly verbose overlord who bears a comical resemblance to KFC mogul Colonel Sanders. Though Helmut Bakatis does a fine job with the material he's given, it sadly doesn't amount to much more than vomiting exposition at both Neo and the viewer, sending the film's dramatic momentum crashing into a brick wall. Though Agent Smith was the most apparent recurring villain throughout the series, the Architect was the man at the top, and ultimately just a bit of an anticlimax, considering how suddenly he arrives and how little we even learn about him. Number 7. Dark Phoenix. There was much secrecy surrounding the nature of Jessica Chastain's Dark Phoenix villain prior to the movie's release, and while many suspected that this was to preserve a huge spoiler, ultimately it was simply because her character was the most forgettable X-Men movie villain of all. Despite rumors that she will be playing the alien Empress Lilandra, Chastain actually played Vuk, a shape-shifting member of the Dabari race who wishes to obtain the Phoenix Force from Jean Grey. Depressingly, Chastain is given no dramatic meat to chew on whatsoever, and it's painfully clear throughout that Vuk's characterization suffered from the film's choppily integrated reshoots. Vuk and the Dabari feel like an afterthought thrown in at the last minute, to the extent that most viewers likely won't even remember their names or motivations. Dark Phoenix could have easily just focused on Jean becoming a corrupted villainous entity as a result of the Phoenix Force, but instead fans had to suffer through this no-effort alien invasion plot. Number 6. The Fog. John Carpenter's The Fog is an impressive production, considering the budgetary constraints the filmmaker was working under, if certainly not one of his most celebrated works. The big problem isn't the film's budget, really, but rather its presentation of the titular villain, which rolls into a Californian coastal town and brings with it a horde of vengeful marina ghosts who have fatally shipwrecked there 100 years prior. Though the idea of an ambiguous fog blanketing a town and killing anyone it touches is a pretty neat concept, the goofy inclusion of meat hook wielding specters transforms the concept from chilly minimalism into unapologetic schlock, no matter how creatively Carpenter tries to film it all. Number 5. A Good Day to Die Hard. The first 4 movies in the Die Hard franchise all did a good to incredible job with their villains, played respectively by Alan Rickman, William Sadler, Jeremy Irons, and Timothy Olyphant. But when it came to the execrable 5th film, A Good Day to Die Hard, virtually no effort at all was made to deliver anything more than the sort of generic Eurotrash villain you'd expect to see in a Taken movie. The ultimate antagonist is eventually revealed to be terrorist Yuri Komarov, though much of the film is dominated by his daughter, Irina, and the scenery-chewing henchman, Alec. And yet, not a single one of them is likely to stick in the viewer's brain beyond the movie's end credits, because neither the writing nor the performances are in any way memorable. Ultimately, the lousy quality of the bad guys is pretty damn emblematic of how utterly unfussed and unremarkable the entire movie itself eventually is. Number 4. Star Trek Into Darkness. Star Trek Into Darkness may not be the worst Trek movie, but it's probably the most frustrating one, if only because J.J. Abrams pointlessly fashioned it into a half-baked, unearned homage to the brilliant Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. After a year of denials that Benedict Cumberbatch was playing a rebooted version of Khan, the film's release revealed the rumors to be true, much to the disappointment of Trek fans worldwide. To be fair, Cumberbatch did a remarkable job with what he was given here, but between Trek fans hating how Khan was a far cry from his original iteration, while new Trek fans had no idea of the name's significance, the character's inclusion just felt totally misguided. Had Cumberbatch simply been playing John Harrison as originally stated, it would have been much easier to accept the character on his own terms, rather than keep comparing him to, well, one of the most iconic antagonists in sci-fi movie history. Instead, the film as a whole desperately hitched itself to the Wrath of Khan's legacy in a way that just came off as cynical, desperate, and pandering. Cumberbatch was certainly the right man to play a Trek villain, but Khan just wasn't the fit. Number 3. The Happening. M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening actually boasts a pretty neat premise, but it's undermined by its off-puttingly silly presentation. The idea of the Earth effectively turning on humanity and releasing a toxin which forces humans to commit suicide isn't terrible, but having the transmission medium by plants? Nah. It doesn't help at all, of course, that Shyamalan conjures up a number of unintentionally hilarious and bizarre moments, such as the sequence where Elliot ends up talking to a plant, which, of course, turns out to be plastic. With a better script and more assured direction, The Happening could have made Twilight Zone-inspired gold out of Mother Nature turning everything we take for granted against us. Instead, it came down to the accidental comedy and totally uncinematic revelation that the plants were the bad guys all along. Number 2. Justice League. There's no comic book movie villain in recent memory more spectacularly bungled than Justice League's Steppenwolf. Though Kieran Hines does a solid job with what little he has, the character is an absolute disaster from conception upwards. If Steppenwolf was supposed to be the Thanos of the DCEU, then he was an abject failure, from the goopy, blurry CGI used to bring him to life to his wafer-thin backstory and motivations, generic dialogue, and near-total lack of personality. Beyond uniting the League together to battle him, he served no other useful storytelling function, and most fans were simply impatiently tapping their feet waiting for his nephew Darkseid to arrive, only for him to sit the movie out entirely. Above all else, Steppenwolf is perfect proof of how difficult it is to pull off a truly brilliant performance capture villain like Thanos, and that for all but the most confident of filmmakers, a guy in a suit is the smart option. Number 1. Jeepers Creepers. Jeepers Creepers is a classic example of a movie which sets up a compelling premise only to run out of steam long before the finale. The first act of the film is an expertly executed exercise in suspense, as siblings Trish and Darry are toyed with by the shadowy driver of a rusted-out truck who, it seems, might also be a serial killer. But the second half of the movie deflates all of that tension by revealing that the Creeper is in fact a supernatural winged entity which awakens every 23rd spring to feast on human beings for 23 days. Jeepers Creepers didn't need to be a totally grounded movie in order to succeed, but by the time the Creeper is showing off its wings, it's just a stretch too silly compared to the gut-wrenching anxiety of those fantastic earlier scenes. And that's our list. Know of any other movies that really needed better villains? Let us know all about them in the comment section below, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, be sure to head on over to whatculture.com and click on some more awesome articles just like the one this video is based on. I've been Gareth from whatculture.com. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm sure I'll see you very, very soon.